My name is Cedar Owens, and I am taking Intro to Family and Consumer Science at North Carolina Central University. And I have to interview someone who is in the industry of my dream job. And my dream job is to be a published author. And so with me, I have Lorenzo Meachum, aka Logie Meachum, who is, among many things, a published author, a blues singer, and instructor, professor, all around Renaissance man. And so I'm going to talk with him and ask him some things about the writing side of his exciting and lengthy life. So, you've had many different professions in your adult life. When did you realize that writing is something that you wanted to pursue?
I discovered writing as a way to save my life. When I got out of the Marine Corps in 1976, it wasn't long that I found myself living in a cabin by myself. When I got in the Marine Corps, I was a fireman for 8 years, and at the end of that 8 years, I was very unhappy. And so I quit my job, and I moved into a cabin out in the woods, and I cut off all the water because my friends would come to my house and drink up all my beer, my Jack Daniels, and then they wouldn't have enough sense to pee in the commode. They would miss it. So I took the water out and the commode out and put the bathroom 100 yards away.
Okay.
And my friends stopped coming to the house there. So running water probably attracts some of the worst people that you have to deal with. If you just take your running water out, they won't come back anymore. Build a toilet 100 yards in the back, they won't come back.
Okay.
So I was there by myself a lot, and I started writing because I had found a journal that I had written when I was 19. And I realized I had more sense. I said, I had a whole lot of sense when I was 19. Where did it go? Who put the Electrolux in my head and sucked out all that good sense that I used to have, and it's just gone. And here I am, and I'm in my late 20s, approaching 30, and I'm reading this stuff I wrote when I was a teenager. And I'm fascinated at the sense that I had. And I just decided, well, do I have that much sense now? And the only way I could figure out was to sit down and write. And I started to writing. And I had read something by Lorraine Hansberry when she was trying to decide what to do. She was working for W.E.B. Du Bois in Harlem, working on a newspaper. And she also worked for Paul Robeson. And she sat down and she decided she wanted to write. And she said, I am a writer, and I will write. And it was just... And so I wrote that on my wall. I am a writer, and I will write. Well, I started writing. And I started writing poems and short stories, but mostly a little poetry. And I started writing these little short vignette stories. And that got me started. It also got me published for the first time. North Carolina Anti-State published a short story I wrote called Ananias and the Mouse. Ananias and the Mouse was a story about a young priest who was an ex-Marine, and he has gone into priesthood. And he, on Veterans Day, goes into a bar, because every Veterans Day, even though he's a priest, every Veterans Day he goes in a bar and has a drink for the boys who are no longer with us, is what the fellas say. They have one for the boys that's no longer with us. And while he's there, he sits down and he plays a tune on the jukebox. And he has a memory about his life in the Marine Corps. And he also has a memory because he becomes a priest because of a young friend that he gets very close to, a young fella named Mousy. Mousy always wore St. Christopher's medal. And they get hit early one morning in the Vietnamese overrun the barbed wire and overrun the compound. And when they've overrun the compound, Mousy is on the machine gun. And the two of them are in the hole together. And the priest and Mousy, they're working together, they're real close, you know. And at the end of the fight ends, it's over, and the mouse, he's sitting there and he's dead. But the gun that he's been shooting is still hot.
Oh.
And it was the young guy who becomes a priest. He couldn't believe it. Rudy is his name, Rudolph G. Rudolph G. can't believe what has happened. He said, I know he was awake. He was just banging away on that 60. He can't believe it. He's obviously been dead for a long time. But that 60 kept running. Mm-hmm. And he reaches down in the water where Mouse's limp body has fallen, and he picks up a St. Christopher's medal. Mouse's St. Christopher and several other things have just, he had it around his neck, how it got off. But Rudolph G picks it up. And when he picks it up, he begins to examine his own life. And he reads the story about St. Paul. St. Paul, when he loses his sight on the road to Damascus, he's blinded, and Ananias is told to go to Paul and touch him. And just by your touch, Paul will receive his sight. And Saint Ananias asked the angel, do I have something to should I tell him something? And the angel tells Ananias, no. He says, I have great things for him to do. Just touch him, and by your touch he shall receive his sight. And so Rudolph G, in this moment, realizes that he has been touched by his experiences with Mousy. And it's in that moment, in that foxhole, that he makes a conscious decision that he's been listening to Mouse talk about God. But for some reason, in this moment, it's not Mouse. Mouse has written a number of fine articles for Christian magazines. Mouse has been published writing for journals, for churches, and theological papers, and he's headed down his road to being a theologian. But it is not Mouse that God uses. God uses Mouse to touch Rudolph G. And Rudolph G is the one who returns to the streets of New York to become the priest, the theologian. And the name of the story is Ananias and the Mouse, because Ananias and Mouse both have the same job. Mm-hmm. To touch someone. So I wrote that one. It got published, and then I started traveling the country performing poetry, and I kind of stopped writing for a while because I was doing so much poetry. I was learning poetry as well as performing. So I learned a ton of poetry. I didn't write any poetry because at the time, slam poetry was very popular, and we would go through Chicago a lot when slam poetry was really starting. The first national grand champion in slam poetry was a friend of mine who actually traveled the country with me, named Ray McNeese. And when we went to this little club in Chicago where this all starts, called the Green Door. And slam poetry and performance poetry really starts at the Green Door. I wish I knew the guy's name, Mike something or another, who owned it and who started it. But when I would be around there, a lot of the folks who were into it, they'd ask me to play the guitar. Play some music to back me up, man. Play me some music to back me up. I got a poem to do. And they would give me money and buy me whiskey to back them up. And they were doing what they were doing for free, but I was getting paid. I said, oh, man, shit, I ain't reciting no poems. Give me that guitar. And I was drinking bourbon back then too, man. Give me a bourbon and I'll play. And they'd give me $20. So I stopped writing and I started performing. But years later, I started again. And then I wrote a novel called To Heal Muhammad Ali. And To Heal Muhammad Ali was a pastor's belief that if he could get to Muhammad Ali and heal him, that Muhammad Ali had answers to much of the world. And he was having all these dreams about some of the worst moments in the life of Muhammad Ali. And he couldn't figure out why he's dreaming the life of Muhammad Ali. Okay. And he finally comes to decide, it must be because God wants me to touch Muhammad Ali and heal him. And he finds out that no, that ain't it at all. That ain't it at all. He never does get to find Muhammad Ali. But in his home church, when the novel opens, that Sunday morning, a young girl has been brought down the aisle and rolled right up to the altar. And as they always do, they gather around and pray. But on this Sunday morning, when that little girl goes home, her mama calls the pastor that night and says, "She's walking. You healed her. You've created a miracle. You healed her. She can walk." And it didn't grab him. He didn't. So after he goes on his thing trying to heal Muhammad Ali, he discovers that what heaven wants us to do are not the big things. There's so many little things God wants us to do right around our doorstep. We tend to go and try to do the big thing. But here he wanted to heal Muhammad Ali. But what God actually wanted him to do was to heal those children, those little people in his life, those people that we view as small and insignificant, because they go on to be great people, great contributors in the lives of numbers of folk in the community. So to heal Muhammad Ali was very much about my belief that Christianity and the Christian mission is not the great miracle worker. It is very much to do simple things to people that you can help on a daily basis right around your door. It's not, you don't wind up in the newspapers for being good at healing Muhammad Ali. So I've did that one, and I'm now working on something I'm enjoying because I like horses. And I've done a lot of research on the first Kentucky Derby, and I'm working on something called Derby.
Okay. Can you tell me about that one?
So that's my, and I'm still working on Derby, and I really enjoy it. So I'm hoping that folks will hopefully go watch it at the movies. I'm hoping to turn it into a movie, because the very first Kentucky Derby is a very interesting. It happens at a very interesting moment, and that's what this is about. It's about race and the Kentucky Derby, horse race and human race.
Okay. Let's see. You've written both fiction and non-fiction. Do you enjoy writing one more than the other?
I wrote a children's book called Great Googly Moogly, and it is by far the thing that has given me the most pleasure because of the way that children enjoy it, the way that kids respond to. I wrote a little song that goes with it, and you can get it on Amazon online. Great Googly Moogly. Buy it for your child today. And every time you say Great Googly Moogly, you have to shake your head like Grady. Grady said, Great Googly Moogly. And kids love that. They just say. So that's where I am now with trying to get. That's been my greatest delight, that particular style.
What made you want to write the children's book?
I had been for 8 years performing poetry for children. And my best successes have been in teaching young people and working with and performing for children. And I was afraid to get out of my ballpark. I was afraid that if I got away from what I have been blessed to do, that the earth shall reach up and smite me if I didn't stick with, children. I had a transformative experience because of my relationship with children. And I felt like I had to stick with that.
Okay. So, haven't modified my questions. The Muhammad Ali novel is a full-length novel?
It's a full-length novel.
Did you have it published?
I wanted to get published under the title, To Heal Muhammad Ali. And I got that close to talking to Muhammad Ali's wife. At the time, the Ali family had sold the image and the rights to that image to another company. And the Ali family, who wanted me to publish it, but they didn't have control anymore.
Oh, okay.
And I have heard that they're back in the saddle again, that they're back in control. I think the novel would work even now that Muhammad Ali is dead. But I had such a bad experience trying to get it published that I thought, like the pastor in the story, maybe it's not the great thing that I should be doing. And that's when I started working on a children's book.
Okay.
I took my own advice out of the story. I forgot. Stop trying to heal Muhammad Ali and go, do something for kids. Do what you do. And that's exactly what I did.
So I already know that you self-published the children's book. Having said what you just said about the Muhammad Ali novel, did you self-publish the children's book because of difficulty you had trying to traditionally publish that novel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I had the Ali family, and I had some information that Mr. Ali, Muhammad Ali himself, liked the idea.
Okay.
But the difficulty in getting a permission from anybody, getting an answer from anybody, and finding out who was in control was just impossible. It was impossible. And I tried my best. Maybe I can get Muhammad Ali himself. Just sign right here, bro. But I was so frustrated that by the time I got through, I just walked away from it and I started working on a children's book. And I felt much better when I could say great googly moogly.
Okay. So when you write, do you outline what you're going to write before you get started, or do you just start writing?
I used to try to outline, but then, especially when I took on the novel To Heal Muhammad Ali, I tried to outline where it was going to go. But characters have a way of speaking for themselves, and I found that out very rapidly because I got to where I could sit and start typing, and I became conscious on several occasions that what I was typing, I wasn't thinking about it. I was being moved because I type very fast. It's what saved my life in the Marine Corps, that I could type. And when I started typing it, just I would occasionally just catch myself. My goodness, this these characters. The Rev was a character I was very familiar with. The Rev in the novel, who is looking for Muhammad Ali, is a very popular Southern minister. He's the next Martin Luther King, people believe, but he's having these nightmares, and all of them are the worst nightmares that ever happened in the life of Muhammad Ali. And he doesn't find it out until he goes to see a sportscaster friend of his who has all these magazines about Muhammad Ali. And he starts seeing the magazines, and he starts seeing all these pictures that have been in his dreams. And he decides, well, maybe I'm meant to do this. Well, I felt like maybe I was meant to write Ali, but I actually, when I had that much difficulty, I felt just like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I can't make it happen. I'm frustrated that I can't make it happen. And so I just walked away. And when I started doing the children's piece, doors just opened up. Everything happened. It was not difficult. I found a publisher. I got it published. Things just went my way. And right after I got it published, on my birthday, I got a diagnosis for stage 4 cancer. And everything stopped. And I have just not been able to even get out and sell copies of the book.
Okay. Let's see. You're a very accomplished blues singer. Have you considered writing about that experience?
I have. I've had so many people to talk to me about writing about my life. And as I look at, I'm 65, and as I sit at this point and look back at the differences in my life and my colleagues, my peers, I realized I lived a little bit of a different life. Everybody kind of found a niche and got in it and just put their heads down and started plowing and didn't stop. And I didn't do that per se. I took chances. I changed situations a lot. And they say life yearns for itself, and I found that to be quite true. That my life yearned for more, and so I followed that yearning, and I want to now write about my life, mostly because of the people that have informed it, that have shaped me, that have helped me, that have influenced me. A little boy in Rochester, New York, who changed my life. A little girl in Arizona who was absolutely brilliant. And because she was so brilliant, I was going to give her a poem that she could perform by herself. She was just brilliant. She'll learn it in 5 minutes. It'll be wonderful. You step out there and you do your solo. It'll be great. It'll be great. You'll be good. Well, it's true. She was brilliant. But they were all in 5th grade. And at that age, nobody wants to be solo. Everybody wants to be part of the group. So when they were rehearsing, and I had all of them in groups, and all these groups were rehearsing poems together, 5 kids here, 7 kids there, 8 kids there, 10 kids there, 4 kids there, and then here's this little girl by herself. And when I called for the performance and told the kids, come, okay, everybody come up, let's see what we have. And we get them started. I call it No Shame Productions. You know, I have them rub their little faces and make all of them holler, it's showtime, you know. And I looked at her and she was just crying. And it hit me immediately. It dawned on me. She's by herself, and she does not want to do this by herself. I got up and went on stage with her, and got on my knees, and did the performance with her. And then when I got through, I apologized to her. Mm-hmm. I told her, I said, you didn't do anything wrong. I said, it's my fault. I said, it's a lesson for me. And I thank you for teaching me, you know, that children need that companionship. They want to be together, you know. They want to the comfort of their peers. They believe in the synchronicity of childhood, you know. Put us all together and we'll have fun. Y'all grown people, get out.
Definitely, yeah.
And it was, she taught me a valuable lesson. And there's so many other lessons and so many other people. A priest who gave me my first confession. I went to Catholic school, but I'd never been to a confession. And I was high as a kite off cocaine and Jack Daniels whiskey when I was working at Harrah's Casino, designing lights for Sammy Davis and Tony Bennett, McGuire's sister, Pat LaBelle, all kinds of people. And I was miserable. Had more money than I ever had. Had all that money and no sense. And I was downtown in Philadelphia, and there was a Catholic church right across from Constitution Hall. And they had a sign up that said, confession today. And I went in and sat down for confession. And the advice that priest gave me was extremely simple. He didn't know me at all. But it impacted me greatly. And 5 minutes after I met the priest and had the confession, I walked out of the church and walked next door. There was a conference there. And Dr. John Hope Franklin was sitting in front of all of these microphones in Constitution Hall. It was the anniversary of the Constitution. And he was giving a lecture. And I had a chance that day to meet John Hope Franklin on what had been for me on a morning that had been one of the worst days of my life. That evening turned out to be one of the best because I met and had a chance to talk to and create a friendship with John Hope Franklin. So it was quite a day. So those things, the people that I've met, my relationship with Sammy Davis Jr., we had a wonderful relationship. We had a lot of fun together. Roberta Flack, we had some marvelous times together. My very wonderful relationship with Maya Angelou. I have the record for being put out of Maya's house more than anybody I can think of. She put me out tons of times. Just get out! Them arms would go up. Just get out! And at her 80th birthday, I was chosen to be the MC of the party for the city of Winston-Salem. And that night in the City Club downtown, I was the MC for Maya's birthday reception up there. And the last thing that we did together was recite a poem called "Preacher Don't Send Me," and that was my children were there, and it was so great because Maya and I both had a glass of wine, and my children were there to see it, and we just had a good time. And the last thing we did together was recite "Preacher Don't Send Me," and but so things like that. There are lots of stories, so I think I'm all right.
Okay, so that already answers my next question about your autobiography. Your autobiography would be amazing because you got stories for days. So that's something that you've got to do. You absolutely have to do. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of us out here clamoring to hear that story.
But there's a lot that will not be in it. It's fun, but there's a whole lot that won't be there. There's a lot of people I can't mention. That's the truth. Help us, Lord. Help us, yes, Lord. I can't. There's some stories I can't tell because they're still living.
Okay. The last question I got for you is, what do you want people to get out of reading your work? What do you want them to draw from your writings?
At this point, for a lot of times I would not have known the answer, but at this point I want people to get out of what I do what Jesus tells us in the Lord's Prayer when they ask him, Lord, how do we pray? And one of the things he says is, on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus never said pack up and go to heaven. Jesus charged Christianity, and so does Augustine. When Augustine creates Christianity, he tells them that the mission of Christianity is to make heaven here on earth. It's not to go anywhere. It is that the people around us are the heaven or the hell that we make for them and us. That in our actions and interactions, either we make heaven or we make hell. And what I hope will come out of my writing is that we are challenged to make heaven here, on earth as it is in heaven. And we are also challenged that we are responsible for all of us, not just the Democrats or not just the Republicans. It is not just the Jews, not just the Muslims, not just the world has become too small. The old myths of the expanding universe, of Western culture and its great journey towards some great mysterious, well, we have reached that place. There's nowhere else to go, there's nowhere to run, all the stories are out the bag, we know about all the lies, there's nowhere to go. So there's nothing to do except tell the truth and reconcile humanity to its own sin, and then do as Jesus suggested, on earth as it is in heaven. And it's very odd that faith has not brought us to this point. Technology has. Whether we accept it in terms of what Jesus says or in terms of what Robert Oppenheimer says. Robert Oppenheimer says we should live together as brothers lest we die together as fools. Whether you take modern science or old Jesus, we're all at the same place. We are at a place that we have to deal with who we are on earth as it is in heaven. So that's what I hope they get from it. There are a lot of young people who don't feel themselves qualified to be in Christian company, who don't feel themselves, they can't hold a candle to these good Christians. And it's not true. Validity. If what Jesus does anything, he brings validity to mankind. And so many other religions do. Unfortunately, people just don't, people want to do what they want to do. And a lot of them want control, want power, are greedy, and they don't give a damn who they hurt. Some people are just that mean. So we're catching hell right now. We're catching hell for that reason. We don't have to die and catch hell. Keep up with Donald Trump because the devil is busy.
Yeah, you got that right. Okay. I want to thank you so much for doing this, and please forgive the amateurish nature of this recording, but I appreciate it so much. And this is Cedra Owens here with Lorenzo Meachum. Y'all don't know how much of a treat this was. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys be careful.